Zane had no idea how he'd ended up on the most luxurious space liner in the galaxy. He wasn't a hero, nor was he interested in being one. He was just a technician, good with tools, even better at avoiding awkward social situations. His specialty was fixing malfunctioning equipment, and his luck had it that he'd been sent to this floating paradise of rich tourists to patch up the aquatic dome, a place where high-profile guests came to swim with alien sea creatures, boasting a sort of nature experience amidst the gleaming glass walls. The kind of work Zane was used to doing, in the far corners of space, away from the spotlight. But there was something different about today. He was knee-deep in controls, muttering to himself as he tinkered with the console, trying to decipher the issue with the water filtration system. The gentle hum of the ship was soothing, almost like a lullaby, as Zane focused on twisting wires and reconnecting power nodes. Yet, even with his mind occupied, something in the back of his head kept nagging at him, a strange intuition, the kind that had never failed him before. He chalked it up to an overactive imagination, though. There was no time for paranoia in his line of work. But then she appeared. Aurelia. The royal alien princess. Of course, Zane knew who she was. Her face was plastered across all the major media outlets, her beauty, her grace, and her status as one of the most eligible, and unattainable, bachelors in the entire known galaxy were legendary. With her elegant violet skin, sleek black hair that shimmered like silk, and her tall, ethereal figure, she seemed to glow with an aura of power and seduction that not even Zane, in his complete lack of romantic understanding, could ignore. Her presence in this aquatic sanctuary was no accident. She had come here, as her home planet was famed for its oceans, to escape the pressures of royalty. And escape she had. Or at least, that's what Zane assumed when he saw her approach the water's edge with an air of arrogance and regal detachment. Everything happened in a blur. 1 second, Aurelia was standing gracefully by the edge, gazing down at the water with a serene expression, and the next, she was plummeting into the depths. It wasn't a slip, it was more like a deliberate act. Zane barely had time to register what was going on before the gentle hum of his surroundings turned into a chaotic screech of alarm bells. Water began flooding the area around him as the emergency system kicked in. The room shifted into panic mode. Zane glanced back at Aurelia. She was flailing about, her long limbs thrashing in the water, looking utterly helpless despite the innate beauty that surrounded her. Her radiant violet skin was now a frantic blur, tangled in her floating black hair. He blinked, took a step forward, and then froze. What the hell? Zane muttered to himself. Is she? Zane wasn't sure what to think. Was this some form of high-class entertainment for the ship's guests? Was she being filmed? Could it be an alien prank? The princess, practically an untouchable celebrity, was drowning? He barely thought, which was rare for him. Most people would have panicked in such a situation. But Zane was used to solving problems without much hesitation. Diving in, he dragged Aurelia's lifeless form toward the edge. He knew what to do. Throw her back to the surface. Catch her in a headlock. Maybe give her CPR. He wasn't a hero, but he could follow the basics of human survival. In seconds, Zane found himself on his knees, trying to pull Aurelia's dripping, unconscious body up to the side of the platform. But it wasn't just a body, oh no. It was her, the princess. The alien beauty that every man in the galaxy would have killed for. Her skin, soft as silk, now slick and shining under the emergency lights. Zane was trying to figure out how to do this without making things awkward, but when his hands made contact with her, he couldn't help but notice the warmth of her body, the soft curves he was not supposed to touch. It was all too much. Just as he was about to drag her further from the water's edge, Aurelia's violet eyes fluttered open, her breath catching in the stillness. She looked up at him, disoriented, confused, and strangely intense. Her gaze locked onto his, and the silence stretched between them. Zane blinked, wiping a trickle of sweat from his brow. Was she pissed at him for saving her? Did royalty even thank commoners like him for anything? Aurelia's lips parted, her voice barely audible as she mumbled. You saved me? Zane scratched his head awkwardly. Yeah? I guess I did. You were, drowning. Pretty sure you were drowning. Her eyebrows arched in a strange, amused way. And now you are my savior? He didn't know how to respond. She was still sprawled on the wet surface, water dripping from her hair and clothes. Her beauty was surreal. It was like looking at a goddess, not the kind of woman you could just casually banter with. Zane shifted uncomfortably, trying to keep his focus. Not sure I'd call it saving, he muttered, trying to keep the conversation light. You seemed to have it covered until you didn't. The princess' gaze softened, but there was something almost mischievous in it now, as if she were enjoying his discomfort. She pushed herself up, dripping wet but looking as majestic as ever. Her eyes never left him. You have no idea what you've done, do you? She said softly, her voice low and melodious, though with a dangerous undertone. Zane shrugged. I saved your life. What's the big deal? Aurelia's smile widened, and her lips parted as if about to speak again. But before she could get the words out, an automated voice echoed through the room, announcing the system's emergency deactivation. The water levels slowly began to recede, leaving the room eerily calm. Aurelia stood there, staring at Zane with newfound interest. You must understand, she began, stepping closer, her voice taking on a more formal, regal tone. In my culture, when one saves a life, it is customary to offer a reward. A very specific kind of reward. A life-altering one. Zane was confused. I'm really not looking for a reward. Just doing my job here, princess. She stepped closer still, her long fingers brushing against his chest with casual elegance. No, you misunderstand. You will receive the highest honor. The reward is not negotiable. The obligation is clear. Zane blinked, still not fully grasping what she was implying. I think you've got the wrong guy. I didn't do this for any reward. Aurelia smiled coyly, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of mischief and intrigue. Oh, but you will enjoy it, human. Trust me. The tension between them thickened, and Zane felt an inexplicable shiver run down his spine. There was something about her, something he couldn't quite place, but it made him feel both uneasy and oddly intrigued. As he stood there, watching the princess with a mix of confusion and mild alarm, he realized that his life, which had been nothing but a quiet existence fixing malfunctioning tech, was about to get a whole lot more complicated. And from the look in Aurelia's eyes, that complication would come in the form of something he might not be prepared for. Something entirely alien. Zane barely registered the shift in the atmosphere, but he heard the faint sound of splashing water before everything around him seemed to slow down. He whipped his head to the side just in time to see Aurelia, the alien princess, flailing in the water below. It was surreal, almost as if the universe had conspired to throw him into the deep end of some cosmic joke. Her graceful form, previously so poised, was now a mess of limbs and frantic movements as she struggled against the currents in the high-tech water dome. For a moment Zane froze. The princess was drowning. Of course, he wasn't one to get involved in galactic politics or royalty. He wasn't even interested in the concept of heroism. He'd never seen the point. But this felt like something that might make the universe pay attention. He looked around. The nearest security team wasn't in sight, and the dome's emergency protocols would take too long. The water seemed to be getting rougher, the waves growing more violent, as Aurelia's elegant form bobbed beneath the surface. Without thinking, he dropped his tools, and before he knew it, Zane was diving into the water. His body wasn't built for swimming, more of a grunt worker type, but he threw himself into the currents, each stroke pushing him closer to the panicking princess. He reached her, grabbing her around the waist with both hands. She was surprisingly light, all smooth, slippery skin and soft curves, but she struggled against him, disoriented and gasping for breath. Her eyes, the color of a deep, intoxicating violet, locked onto his. "Let go of me!" she gasped, thrashing in his grip. But Zane wasn't about to let go. There was no time for diplomacy here. He pulled her toward the edge of the dome, his muscles screaming as he dragged her against the violent tides. Finally, they reached a sturdy ledge, and Zane hoisted her out of the water. She collapsed onto the smooth surface, coughing up water, her body trembling. He, too, was panting, soaking wet, his heart racing. But before he could step back and give her space, she turned toward him, her violet eyes wide, her lips slightly parted in a look that Zane couldn't quite read. "Why did you?" She stopped herself, a deep breath escaping her chest as she steadied herself on her hands and knees. Her entire demeanor shifted, her gaze now not filled with panic but something else, something calculating. She tilted her head slightly, as if taking him in for the first time. Zane blinked, wiping water from his eyes. "Ah, you were drowning. It wasn't really a choice." She stood up slowly, brushing the wet strands of her hair from her face, her movements fluid and graceful. The princess looked almost regal, even in a soaking wet swimsuit. She didn't appear to be mad about the rescue. If anything, there was a strange flicker of appreciation in her eyes. "That was most impressive," she said, her voice suddenly softer, more intrigued. "Not many have the courage to act in such a way. Your people are different." Zane frowned, still trying to catch his breath. "I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just did what needed to be done." "Of course," she said, her lips curling into a smile that could only be described as knowing. She stepped closer to him, her presence overwhelming as her gaze flicked down to his soaked attire. "Well, you did save me, didn't you?" Zane looked around awkwardly. Yeah? I did." He had no clue where this conversation was going, but something told him that whatever came next would probably involve more confusion and awkwardness than he was prepared for. Aurelia took a deep breath, her expression shifting. "You see, in my culture, when someone saves a life, particularly a royal life, there is a tradition. A way to repay the favor." She looked at him directly, her eyes narrowing in an almost predatory way. Zane raised an eyebrow, trying to suppress the uncomfortable feeling creeping up his spine. "Repay? What do you mean, exactly?" Aurelia's smile widened. "It is an ancient custom. We give the hero a reward. A special gift." Zane squinted at her, not sure whether to be impressed or terrified. "I'm not really into that kind of thing, if you know what I mean." She tilted her head. "Not into what exactly?" Her voice was playful now, her eyes dancing with a wicked glint. "I mean the reward. I'm not really expecting anything. I didn't save you for some grand gesture or anything." Zane rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. Aurelia took a step closer. "Oh, but I insist. It's tradition." She reached out and touched his arm, sending a strange tingle through Zane's body. He flinched slightly at the touch, unsure whether it was her alien physiology or just the sheer intensity of her gaze. "You don't understand," she said, her voice dipping into something much more sultry. "You don't get to not accept it. It's part of the bargain. My people believe in reciprocity." She gave him a slow, deliberate once-over, as if gauging his reaction to her every word. Zane's face turned a shade of red that had nothing to do with his embarrassment or the warm, humid atmosphere of the aquatic dome. "Look, I didn't sign up for any weird alien customs. I just fixed your water system and saved you from drowning. That's it." Aurelia's smile didn't waver. "Well then, we'll have to make sure you understand, won't we?" Zane's heart raced again, and for the first time since he dived in to save her, he started to feel the heavy weight of what he had gotten himself into. His mind scrambled for an exit plan, but nothing sounded right. He wasn't a hero, and he wasn't in this for whatever bizarre reward she had in mind. He was just trying to keep things simple, but Aurelia wasn't making that easy. Her gaze shifted downward, lingering for just a beat too long, before returning to meet his eyes. "You see, hero, there's a reason my people don't let just anyone save us. There's always a price." Zane gulped, his discomfort now growing rapidly into something else entirely. What in the galaxy had he gotten himself into? And what exactly was this price she was talking about? Zane hauled Aurelia to the edge of the dome, each movement more strained than the last. His arms burned from the exertion, and he was sure he was about to drown, too. She wasn't helping, flailing around like a fish out of water, but he couldn't fault her for the panic. Her breathing was ragged, chest heaving as she sputtered and coughed, water streaming from her lips. "You!" she gasped, blinking up at him, her eyes wide with shock. "You saved me." "Yeah," Zane said breathlessly. "Pretty heroic, huh?" He couldn't help the sarcasm that laced his words. "Not exactly how I imagined spending my afternoon, but hey, it worked out." Aurelia's violet eyes narrowed. There was something about her gaze that made him feel both exposed and oddly powerful, like she could see right through him. She wiped water from her face, trying to regain some semblance of composure, but the princess still looked like she was teetering on the edge of shock. She started, but stopped herself, looking uncertain. Zane noticed she was trying to suppress what seemed to be a flurry of emotions. Was it gratitude? Or embarrassment? His brow furrowed. Aurelia straightened up, visibly gathering herself. "You must understand," she said slowly, her tone taking on a regal quality despite the shock, "that I am the most important being in this sector of the galaxy. My safety is paramount. My life, my death, could shift the balance of entire civilizations." Zane blinked, trying to process her words. "Wait, hold on. I just dragged your ass out of the water. Are you telling me your survival is some kind of universal thing?" He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it. "Lady, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing most of the time, let alone saving royal asses." She stiffened, her demeanor taking a more serious turn. "You do not understand, human," she said, her voice suddenly cold and commanding. "You saved me. My life is now yours to do with as you wish. And I will repay you in the most sacred way our people know." Zane's mind spun. "Wait, what? Repay me?" He wasn't sure if she was joking. "What are you talking about?" Aurelia's eyes softened for a moment, a strange mixture of tenderness and seriousness. "On my planet, it is customary for those who save a royal to receive a reward. A gift beyond measure. And you have earned it. You will receive what you desire most, human." Zane rubbed his temples, unsure if he was still in the middle of some wild fever dream. "Lady, I don't need a reward. Seriously. I'm just doing my job." He shook his head, attempting to clear his thoughts, but Aurelia was still looking at him as if she just handed him the universe's most prized treasure. "You misunderstand," she said softly, stepping closer. "You have no choice in the matter. Our customs demand it. It is not something to be refused." Her voice lowered, as if offering him a secret. "What you will receive, human, is the greatest gift known to my people, a gift that transcends simple wealth." Zane shifted awkwardly on his feet. The more she spoke, the more confused he became. "So what, you're gonna give me some ancient alien artifact or a planet or something?" Aurelia took a step back, her eyes twinkling with a mixture of mystery and mischief. "Not quite." She gave him a coy smile, almost as if she were toying with him, and then in a voice filled with seriousness added, "I offer you the opportunity to partake in the most sacred ritual of my people. The mating ritual. You, human, will become the most honored male in all the stars." Zane blinked. This had to be some kind of joke. He wasn't sure whether to laugh, scream, or faint. Wait, hold on. You want me to what?" "The mating ritual," she repeated, her eyes flickering with an almost predatory excitement. "It is the greatest reward I can offer you. A sacred union that will bind us together for all eternity." He looked at her, dumbfounded. "You've got to be kidding me." "No," she said, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I am most serious. You saved me. You will be the first human to ever participate in the ritual. And your reward, human, will be me?" Zane stared at her for a long beat, his brain scrambling to process the words. "I'm sorry you want me to." He cut himself off, a dry laugh escaping him. "Oh hell no. This is not happening. This is some weird alien prank, right?" Aurelia's expression hardened, no longer playful. This is no prank. It is a deep, spiritual bond. A connection that will elevate your species in the eyes of the galaxy. Zane ran a hand through his hair, the absurdity of the situation finally starting to sink in. Lady, I'm just a guy who fixes stuff. You know, like a glorified handyman in space. I don't need some ritual or whatever the hell this is. Aurelia's gaze hardened, her voice dropping into a low, dangerous tone. You do not refuse a gift from the royal line, human. It would dishonor both of us, and there are consequences for such actions. It is not just about me. It is about the entire future of your species. Zane felt the weight of her words. For a moment, he wasn't sure if he was dealing with a spoiled princess or something far more complex. Still, the idea of some ancient mating ritual seemed like the kind of thing he'd laugh off if it weren't for the unsettling intensity in her eyes. He opened his mouth, trying to find the words to politely refuse, but he had a sneaking suspicion that the princess wasn't the kind of woman who took rejection well. But the more he thought about it, the more it dawned on him. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't some kind of mistake after all. Maybe this was the universe's idea of a joke. Or his punishment. Either way, Zane had a feeling his life was about to get much, much weirder. Aurelia's gaze hardened, her posture becoming stiff, her regal demeanor returning. Yes, she said, her voice no longer sounding uncertain. You may not understand, but to save me is to commit yourself to a debt that cannot be repaid by mere words or actions. On my planet, this act is sacred. Her words hung in the air, charged with some kind of divine significance that Zane couldn't quite grasp. He tilted his head. Wait a minute, so what exactly do you mean by debt? He wasn't sure if he should be flattered, confused, or terrified. But something told him he should start walking away, or at least start preparing for a major awkward situation. The tradition, she continued, is that one who saves the life of a royal is bound by honor to receive a reward of equal significance. Her gaze flickered over him, eyes narrowing slightly. And this reward is, typically something that changes their life forever. Zane blinked. Wait. What? Aurelia's smile was dangerously close to smug. On my planet, to save a royal is to be chosen as a partner for life. An offering. A gift. The reward is union. She pronounced the last word with deliberate slowness, as if she were delivering some ancient prophecy. A bonding. A ritual that merges two souls, physically, mentally, and in every way imaginable. Zane's jaw dropped. Wait. You're saying, you want me to what? Have sex with you? His voice was almost a strangled laugh. He must have misunderstood. He had to have misunderstood. Aurelia's eyes glinted, and Zane could have sworn he saw the faintest hint of amusement there. That is one way to put it, she said, tilting her head. But it's not just about physicality. The bonding is sacred. It's an experience that will alter the very fabric of your existence. It is said that such a bond transcends all limits of what you think you know about love, pleasure, and even your own soul. Zane stared at her, blinking rapidly. So what, you're telling me that by saving you from drowning, I've now signed up for some kind of intergalactic sex marriage thing? Aurelia nodded, her smile turning more playful. Exactly. You should feel honored. Few humans have been chosen for such an important duty. Many never even have the chance to prove their worth. Zane ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. This was madness. The universe had a sense of humor, all right, and Zane was the punchline. He'd been minding his own business, trying to avoid any romantic entanglements, and now he was supposed to be bound to a royal alien princess for some bizarre interspecies mating ritual? This was a disaster. I don't know if I can handle this, he muttered, looking around for a way out, but there was no escape. This wasn't some awkward date he could bail on, this was a life-altering event. Aurelia was studying him, and her smile deepened, knowing full well the weight of the situation. I can see that this is unexpected. But you have no choice, Zane. You saved me. You cannot go back now. The bond must happen, for the sake of our cultures. The universe demands it. Wait, Zane said, swallowing hard. But what if I don't want this? I'm not a hero. I'm just some guy trying to do my job. I'm not some romantic space knight who's ready to mate with an alien princess to save the galaxy or whatever the hell this is. Aurelia's expression softened, her tone changing to something a little more understanding, though still tinged with that royal authority. I understand your hesitation. Most humans are not accustomed to such customs. You may be confused. But this is what I offer, what I must offer in return. She reached out and lightly touched his arm, sending an unexpected thrill through his body. Look, Zane said, trying to regain his composure. This is crazy. I'm not some cosmic plaything. I'm just a guy who fixes machines. You can't just spring this kind of thing on me. Aurelia raised an eyebrow, a sly smirk tugging at her lips. So you are not interested in becoming a hero? In experiencing the greatest pleasures the universe has to offer? Zane felt the heat rise to his face. He wasn't sure whether to laugh or scream. You've got to be kidding me. Aurelia leaned in closer, her breath warm against his ear, sending a shiver down his spine. What if I told you that the bonding is not just about pleasure, Zane? It's about power. It's about transcending the physical world and entering a new realm where your desires are no longer limited. A connection like nothing you've ever imagined. Zane stood frozen, caught somewhere between disbelief and genuine curiosity. His mind was racing, his body responding in ways he hadn't anticipated, and the last thing he expected was to be seriously considering what she was saying. The idea of becoming some sort of royal consort wasn't just insane, it was alluring in a way he hadn't expected. Aurelia's voice dropped to a softer, almost teasing tone. It's your choice, of course. But I promise you, once you've experienced it, there's no going back. Zane exhaled sharply, his heart pounding. This was a mess. A total, irredeemable mess. But what the hell, life was short, right? All right, princess, he said, with more bravado than he felt. I guess I'm your chosen one. He forced out a grin, even though his mind was screaming in every possible direction. The universe had indeed found a way to turn his life upside down. And now, whether he liked it or not, he was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went.